Commentator is Noppers. The introduction of ammunition in the 1880s that can be classed as smokeless powder allowed a gentleman named Hiram Stevens Maxim to be the first to convert hand-cranked machine guns into truly automatic weapons. Effectively, the even combustion from a smokeless powder round allowed him to harness the recoil of the weapon to work the bolt, expend a spent cartridge, and reload the weapon. Thus, the Maxim machine gun was born in 1884. Humans, not to be outdone by each other in their thirst for better weaponry, took this concept to new heights. Hotchkiss, Lewis, Browning, Madsen, Mauser, just to name a few. Their designs dominated the 20th century battlefield. Belt-fed, water-cooled, various calibers, synchronizing gearing, all terms from World War I that carried forwards with little change into World War II. For hell let loose, you too can experience the thrill and enjoyment of operating two of the world's most famous machine guns, or MGs as we call them, the MG42 and the Browning M1919. Your in-game loadout for the German machine gunner consists of the MG42 with a Walter P38 and a pair of bandages. For the US machine gunner, it consists of the Browning M1919, a Colt M1911, and two bandages. Outside of that, harsh language is the only other thing you'll need for both machine gunners, because let's not forget that MGs are great fun and a pain in the ass to use. They are one of the hardest roles in the game to master. We'll discuss this later. Our first machine gun is the German MG42. This was introduced in 1942 as a variant of the MG34, the idea being to solve the German Army's light machine gun problems. The overall concept here was to bring to the table the best or most proven features of the various machine gun designs from around the world. Everything from barrel change features to the locking arrangement, that was actually a Polish design, pressing, riveting and spot welding to reduce manufacturing challenges, and so on. As a result, battle life and performance were well documented, and the MG42 is one of the finest machine guns to ever see combat. Let us now take a moment to have a quick listen to it. The terrifyingly high rate of fire, 22 rounds per second, might seem like overkill and ultimately would cause the muzzle to climb if long bursts were attempted. But it was usually fired in short bursts, thereby holding the bullet grouping to a small enough area to be effective fire. This weapon acted like a long-range shotgun, and the German army rated it highly in both inflicting heavy casualties as well as the effective suppression of enemy who were dug in. For our next demonstration of not being able to hit a barn door, we present the Browning Model 1919, named for its release in 1919. This is seriously complex stuff, isn't it? The M1919 is an M1917. You can work that one out for yourself, but it's air-cooled. Technically in the game it's an M1919A6, but we'll talk about that later. It has the .30-06, which is a 30 cal round, which was a modernised round developed in the post-World War I years. It had a heavier barrel, but was easier to maintain compared to the previous water-cooled versions. Originally it was designed for vehicles or tripod mounting, and that was still the preference, but combat environments were becoming much more fluid than what was previously experienced in World War I in the trenches. It was the light machine gun, utilised in conjunction with the M1917 and the Browning M2 heavy machine gun. Let's have a quick listen to this one also. For the M1919, it was designed in an era when the belt-fed machine gun was primarily to be used as a static weapon. The exception to this trend was the MG08/15, a design aimed at making infantry machine guns portable and more combat flexible. This evolved into the MG34 and subsequently the MG42. So by comparison, the M1919 had a much more limiting factor in that it reduced the agility of a combat squad. It was clumsy and awkward on a battlefield when compared to the MG42, with a large tripod that took time to set up. Time you absolutely did not have when trading ammunition at high velocity with the enemy. US forces lived a life of improvisation with this weapon, propping it against anything that would mount it effectively, which led to the M1919A6 that you see here that had a buttstock and a bipod, turning it into a light machine gun that was more flexible in combat. We'll go through some footage now of positioning and firing of these weapons to demonstrate accuracy and practical application of deployment and redeployment and some of the frustrations you can experience. Here's the movement with the weapon, and we can run or we can advance with weapon braced as demonstrated in this piece of footage. But watch now what happens when we fire the weapon. I'm on the mouse, desperately trying to keep the weapon aimed at the threat there. We have a couple of shooting styles I demonstrated: unbraced, braced, braced with mouse control, but it is better to deploy the weapon as it increases accuracy. So what I've done here is I've deployed it on this little rock wall in a kneeling position or crouching. Note also that I'm using a barn door as a target to show that I can actually occasionally hit it, despite rumours. Note in the deployed mode we have a hard left and a hard right for how far we can fire in our arc of fire. I'll demonstrate that later in the video, but also your view will be limited by terrain and bushes and stuff. We're going to see that in a few more of the clips that I've got here, the sequences of where I've deployed on various pieces of the terrain. In this one here you can see that was no good, so I moved to the other side of the rocks as an example. And here's a few more clips anyway of how we can deploy this weapon and what sort of terrain we can actually deploy it on. We can use pretty much anything: rocks, fences, logs, whatever we like.
They're behind us. How'd that happen? Get in the trenches at Road to Bastogne if you can. Someone... Oh, we already got a machine gunner. Alright, good.
There are a number of key factors that you need to think about before you pick a deploy location. I'll run through a number of them now in no particular order. What's your arc of fire, and does it cover the threat axis? How exposed are you to enemy fire? Do you have cover? Are your flanks protected? When you open up with your machine gun, everyone is going to know you're there, and they'll either avoid you or they'll flank you. Did the enemy see you move to that particular spot? The moment you're popping your head up, they're probably going to knock it with a round or two. If you get injured, where are you moving to? Is there cover for you to hide behind to bandage yourself? Once you shoot and they know you're there, are you going to keep popping your head up in that same location? If you plan on staying there a while, have you got resupply accessible? If you're on the attack, how are you selecting positions to deploy? Where are you moving to when your team moves forwards? Did you select a position that can support your team with suppressive fire, or because it looked cool? While we're deployed, we are occasionally going to get injured. Now watch what happens when we are injured here. You'll notice that the normal F key functionality for bandage is suppressed by that deploy weapon F key image. So we can either pack up like I've done here, which opens up the bandage and we bandage ourselves, or we can use the 3 key and the mouse wheel to select the bandage. It is a little bit annoying though. Either way, you probably don't want to stay there because you're probably going to get hit again. Let's have a look at some full combat sequence demonstrations. In this particular one, we know that there are some enemies spawning to our south across this paddock. So we need to find a spot to deploy where we can provide suppressive fire, which will allow our team to push forwards. As we move around looking for a setup location, we can clearly see that we need to remember to protect ourselves from flanking enemy. The machine gun is meant to be a base of support, so the idea is that you are a keystone or anchor point for your squad to work from. So long as we keep up a good firing rate, the enemy won't be able to shoot back very accurately, if at all. Hence why burst fire is much more efficient than a fire hose. You can shoot for longer without reloading, providing precious seconds for your team's advance. And that's your job, providing suppressive fire so that your squad mates can advance to engage and destroy the enemy. Once they're getting close to what is called your beaten zone, you can redeploy in advance to their location to set up your next position. If the attack fails, you are still the defensive point from which they can establish an attacking force. Ping 2 enemy. In this sequence, we get trapped behind the building as we are being suppressed. It's challenging because there's no way of setting up to put accurate fire downrange, and to be honest, there's no squad or team player here, just a heap of people running around madly, hoping to kill enemy without being killed. This is especially challenging when there is a major enemy push on, including artillery fire. You know when the enemy are about to rush in when the artillery suddenly stops. Unless their arty player is an arse, of course. So we find ourselves a set-up position along a likely enemy axis of advance, and we do what we can to hold the position.
There's people on the outside.
In this example, there is clearly an MG42 at the top of the cliff shooting on our mates. Everyone knows he's there and he's laying down some effective suppressive fire. But I wonder if his flanks are secure. You can hear him, he's up there. Very distinct killing machine, that one.
Enemy on my ping. I'm going to put the AP up on the cliff top at south end.
Cleared them out here. They're clear, Red, they're clear.
Nice, yeah, I'm coming up to you.
The machine guns here are therefore more aligned as defensive weaponry, based on their lack of agility and accuracy on the move, as well as the challenges of highlighting your location as soon as you fire the bloody things. The idea is that you are a support weapon, not a primary assault weapon, so you should use it in this manner. Therefore, some of your considerations when selecting the machine gun role should be as follows: 3 to 5 round grouping, defending or attacking, using cover and concealment to protect yourself, suppressive fire, flank protection, elevated positioning, resupply, and attack bounds. And that's about it, folks. Your knowledge of the maps and terrain always comes into play in games such as these, and it is very true with the machine gunner role. There's nothing more satisfying than the ping of an enemy helmet at 200 meters, but the challenge with the machine gun is real. I do hope you enjoy playing it, and I'll see you in the next video.